Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Well, as cliche as it may sound, it's true. We are all guilty of judging people by their cover or by their looks. And whether we meant to or not, everyone in this room has judged someone today. Whether it was yourself in the morning while you were getting ready for school, or maybe the person you judged was somebody you saw in the hallway earlier. You might have thought someone's outfit looked really cute, or maybe you thought that someone's outfit looked really ugly. The problem with our judgment lies within our ability to control our judgmental thoughts. We often tend to allow these thoughts to spiral and allow it to define who a person is, a person we don't even know. Since our judgment comes so naturally to us, most of the time we're not recognizing the impact it has on our everyday lives, including our relationships with others. For example, for the person whose outfit you might have found cute, you most likely would attempt to start a conversation with them, or at least you wouldn't mind it. But what about the person whose outfit you found ugly? Now, if this person is a stranger to you, you most likely wouldn't even attempt to go near them, all because you think they have that one bad trait. So why are we so intrigued to get to know the people we find attractive, but not the people we find unattractive? Well, many of you might be thinking of the term pretty privilege right now. However, it's actually much more than that. Our brains are unknowingly engaging in a phenomenon called the halo effect. The halo effect is a type of cognitive bias in which our overall perception of an individual influences our thoughts and feelings regarding their character. Or in simpler terms, when we notice a positive trait in an individual, then we automatically assume that all their other traits are just as positive because of it. The term halo effect was first coined in 1920 by psychologist Edward Thorndike. During his experiment, A Constant Error in Psychological Ratings, he asked military officers to rank these traits of soldiers: leadership, loyalty, dependability, and intelligence. In this experiment, he found that the correlations were too high and too even, meaning that if they had found a soldier really attractive, then they ranked all those other traits just as high because of it. Now mind you, this experiment was done in 1920, over 100 years ago, yet the halo effect is still relevant today and always will be. Before I go on to further explain the halo effect, I want everyone to get a more general understanding of the concept first. So here I will show a few examples of people who others have typically been influenced by the halo effect for. For starters, taken from the show You is Joe Goldberg. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the show, Joel Goldberg is the main character who comes across as intelligent, handsome, and funny to everybody he meets. However, behind those positive traits is actually an obsessive stalker, psychopath, and murderer. We, the audience, are supposed to hate his character, as he's clearly an awful person. However, because of his good looks, many people actually defend him and say that he only killed people who deserved it, or everything he's done he's had a good reason for, when in reality, he was killing innocent people and he's just a psychopath. If the actor is played by somebody who is less attractive, then hardly anyone would defend him. But because he has his good looks to back him up, everyone's being blinded by his flaws. But the halo effect isn't only seen on screen, it also happens in real life, which leads me to my next example, Cameron Herron. He may look familiar to some of you as his story blew up on TikTok a few years ago, but for those of you who don't know, he gained popularity on social media for his good looks. But behind his good looks is actually a reckless driver. He would constantly speed dangerously over the speed limit, and despite all of his warnings from cops, he continued to speed anyways. This was, of course, until a tragic accident of May 2018, where his reckless driving ended up killing a mother and her daughter. People took his story to TikTok and started defending him, saying that he's innocent, that what he did was an accident, or to let him go just because of how cute he is. But if he was like a 40-year-old ugly man, nobody would defend him. But because he looks like that, what he did was okay, apparently. For my last example, I want everyone to think of their favorite celebrity. The thing about celebrities is that since their lives are so public, most of the time, their flaws are bound to get leaked, or get them canceled, as we may know. For example, if you were just thinking of Taylor Swift, you might love her for her music, her personality, maybe even her good looks. However, what about the fact that she's the celebrity with the highest carbon dioxide emissions? If you're a fan of her, you probably choose to ignore this fact, or maybe even defend her and say, well, she has places and concerts to attend to. But that's not really a good reason for polluting the earth. Or another example is Travis Scott. You might also probably like him for his music, personality, or looks. However, what about that one festival of his where 8 people ended up being pronounced dead? If you're also a fan of him, you probably choose to ignore this, or maybe also defend him by saying, well, he didn't directly kill those people. But at the concert, he didn't do anything to stop it either. Travis and Taylor are only 2 of the hundreds of thousands of celebrities out there. And the halo effect can go for anyone's favorite celebrity. You might have just ignored their flaws because of how much you admire them. So why do we let these people get away with such bad things? Well, I just said it, the halo effect. But now really, what is it? Here's a picture of the human brain. Highlighted in blue is our frontal lobe. And 2 of the functions of the frontal lobe are judgment and decision making, the 2 key elements behind the halo effect. But as you can see, there are also many other functions that this part of the brain controls. And that's only in the frontal lobe. There are still many other parts of the brain, highlighted in yellow, green, and red, that have many other functions of their own. So why does this matter? Because on a daily basis, our brains are getting overwhelmed with so much information to the point where it has to resort to shortcuts in order to make decision-making faster and more manageable. Our brains often tend to search for simplicity rather than complexity when it comes to processing information. Hence, psychiatric Carl Jung's quote, "Thinking is difficult, that's why most people judge." When our brains notice one positive or negative trait in an individual, we take a mental note of it and we attempt to apply it to everything else that follows it. So that's why when our brains see an opportunity to fill in the missing pieces, in this case with judgment, then it will do it because it's easier, less time consuming, much less of a hassle. But the halo effect also comes with its dangers, and Joe Goldberg, Cameron Herron, and all your favorite celebrities are all good examples on how the halo effect can actually be dangerous. The halo effect can make it easy for us to get trapped in toxic relationships with people because we're blinded by their positive traits and they're blinding us of their red flags, even if it's just one good thing compared to multiple bad things. Once our brains make up a positive persona for a person, it can be challenging for us to unravel this and see the truth, because most of the time, we don't want to. Which is why we may overlook signs of toxicity, mistaking them for mere quirks or misunderstandings. So when we base a person's entire personality just off the 1 or 2 traits we may know about them, that's why we're allowing bad people to get away with doing bad things. So now with the dangers in mind, you might be wondering, well then how do we stop judging? Well, it's actually impossible to stop judging. That's like equivalent to asking yourself to just stop thinking. However, there are some methods that you can do to reduce the influence of the halo effect, such as to be aware. When you are present in the moment and not distracted by a million other things, then you are allowing yourself to focus on one thing at a time. This will reduce the likelihood of your brain getting overwhelmed with so much information to the point where it has to rely on making assumptions about people you don't know. Another method is to slow down. Instead of making a final decision right away, take some time to consider your options. Ask yourself, what do I know about this person so far? If you only know 1 or 2 traits about someone, then resist the urge to make a judgment about them just off those traits. Instead, set aside time to actually get to know them, similar to how none of us would date somebody we just met. We would go on a few dates with them, talk to them more, get to know them before we actually date them. And my last method is to be systematic. This one may sound complex, but it's actually a lot easier than you think. Make a mental checklist of all the essential criteria that you must consider before making a choice. Similar to how we all have mental checklists of qualities we look for in a partner or a friend. Gradually over time, your brain will slowly adapt to this method and won't jump to conclusions so easily. But we don't always have to fight against the halo effect. We can actually manipulate our knowledge of it to our advantage. Since we know that a first impression has such a big impact on how random strangers perceive us, we can look or act better purposefully so that people perceive us as better people than we might actually be. Because like I said earlier, the halo effect isn't going anywhere, so we might as well use it to our advantage if we can. So now that you've gained this knowledge about the halo effect, the next time you meet a stranger, or anyone really, I want everyone to be aware of their thoughts. Because would you want somebody to judge your entire personality just based off a bad outfit? So now you can actually get to know people for who they are. Thank you.